3,280,081.
Wow. You are starting with the big number right out of the gate today.
I feel like I have to. It is really the only number that matters this morning.
So that's the count.
That is the specific count of FORTINET devices. We're talking firewalls, web gateways, the actual hardware protecting corporate networks that are sitting exposed online right now.
My goodness.
And every single one of them is potentially vulnerable to what we are discussing today.
It's a staggering attack surface. And like you said, we aren't talking about some niche product here.
Yeah.
And if you are listening to this and, checking your calendar, you'll realize it is Friday, January 30th, 2026. That number should scare you a little bit more than usual today.
Because today isn't just a casual Friday. Today is the deadline.
The hard deadline. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, circled this date in red ink.
Right.
If you are a federal agency, you are mandated to have fixed this vulnerability by, end of business today?
And if you're in the private sector?
Well, if you are in the private sector and you haven't fixed it yet, you are effectively driving without a seatbelt in a demolition derby.
So we are doing a deep dive today into CVE 2026-24858. And look, I know CVE numbers usually just sound like alphabet soup to most people, but this one feels different.
They're 9.4.
It's rated a 9.4 out of 10 on the severity scale.
Which is essentially drop everything and run to the server room territory.
Right. But the reason we're covering this isn't just because the score is high. It's because of why it's happening.
The how.
Yeah, the how. This isn't some complex Matrix-style hack. This is a story about a quality of life feature, something designed to make your job easier, accidentally handing the keys to the castle to anyone who asks nicely.
It's the ultimate irony of modern cybersecurity, isn't it? And the feature in question is FortiCloud Single Sign-On, SSO.
Right.
It was built to solve the headache of managing, 50 different passwords for 50 different firewalls.
Which, to be fair to the IT folks listening, is a massive headache. If you manage a global network, logging into every box individually is a nightmare.
Oh, absolutely. Centralized management is the holy grail. You want one pane of glass to see everything.
Right.
But in this specific case, the implementation of that convenience created a massive blind spot. We are looking at an authentication bypass that affects the core ecosystem. FortiOS, FortiManager, FortiAnalyzer.
So the whole family of products.
Essentially the brain and the nervous system of a FortiNet network.
Okay, so let's get into the mechanics of this, because when I first read the report, I had to reread it to make sure I understood just how simple it is.
It's alarmingly simple.
They're calling it an authentication bypass.
Correct.
In plain English, that usually means I am getting in without a password. But how does the system actually let that happen? It can't just be an open door.
It's not an open door. It's more like a confused doorman. So imagine the handshake process. You have a device, let's say a FortiGate firewall, sitting in your office, and you have the cloud server, FortiCloud. When you try to log in using SSO, your device asks the cloud, hey, is this user legitimate?
Okay, so the device defers judgment to the cloud.
Exactly. The cloud checks if you have a valid FortiCloud account. If you do, it says, yes, this is a valid user. The problem is, the device, due to this bug, was stopping the interrogation right there.
Wait, it stops at, is this a valid user? It doesn't ask, is this the owner of this specific device?
That is the missing link. That's the bug. The system failed to properly segregate access rights. It basically confirmed you are a member of the FortiCloud Club, but didn't check if you were on the guest list for that specific party.
So if I'm an attacker and I just go register my own perfectly legal, valid FortiCloud account,
and then you point your browser at my firewall.
the firewall sees that I authenticated with the cloud, sees the thumbs up from the SSO server, and it just lets me in.
It lets you in. It treats my valid key for my house as a master key for your house, simply because the lock manufacturer recognizes the brand of the key.
That is terrifying.
Yeah.
It completely breaks the trust model. It's not checking authorization at all. It's only checking authentication.
Precisely. And that distinction is why this is a 9.4 severity. It requires no brute forcing, no guessing passwords.
No social engineering?
None. If the device has the SSO interface exposed and the attacker has a FortiCloud account, they are an administrator. End of story.
But here is the thing that really confuses me. I was looking through the technical advisories, and there's this line that keeps popping up. This feature is disabled by default.
Ah, yes, the technical truth versus the practical reality. This is where the story gets really interesting for anyone interested in, like, user interface design.
Right, because if it's disabled by default, how do we get to 3.2 million exposed devices? Did 3 million admins wake up and decide to turn on a vulnerable feature?
No, this is what I call the UX trap. Technically, in the code, the bit is set to 0. It is
Yeah.
off. However, think about the last time you set up a piece of network gear, or even a new phone. You get the wizard.
The setup wizard. Next. Next. Agree next.
Exactly. When you initialize a FortiNet device, it wants you to register it with FortiCare. You have to do this to get support, firmware updates, and all that. It is a standard part of the workflow.
Okay, I'm with you.
During that registration flow, there is a checkbox.
And let me guess. It is pre-checked.
It effectively defaults to opt-in through the process. The option says, allow administrative login using FortiCloud SSO. So unless the admin explicitly pauses, reads it, understands the implication, and unchecks it, that feature gets enabled as part of the I just want to get this thing working workflow.
So it is just the path of least resistance.
It is muscle memory. We condition IT staff to register devices immediately. The interface couples registration with enabling this SSO listener.
So the vast majority of those 3 million devices are exposed because the default setup path led them right off a cliff.
That's it. It's not negligence in the traditional sense. It's just a very unfortunate default.
That is a design philosophy issue, isn't it? Secure by default versus functional by default.
It's the central tension of the industry. You make it too hard to set up, people complain. You make it too easy, you get CVE 2026-24858.
So we have the scope millions of devices, we have the method, a broken handshake, and a pushy setup wizard. Now we need to talk about the reality on the ground. Because this isn't theoretical.
No, the theoretical window closed a week ago on this one.
FortiNet confirmed active exploitation started on January 22nd. That is 8 days before the CISA deadline today. What do we know about the people breaking in?
We know more than usual, actually. FortiNet was able to isolate the specific accounts used to initiate the handshake.
Or were they?
The attackers used email addresses like cloudknock@mail.io and cloudinet@mail.io.
Let's unpack that. CloudKnock, NOC.
Network Operations Center.
Right. So if I'm a sysadmin and I am scanning through thousands of lines of logs at 2 in the morning and I see a connection from CloudKnock,
your brain just glazes over it.
It looks like infrastructure. It looks like the vendor checking in on its own system.
That is the camouflage. They aren't using hacker@evil.com. They are using .io domains, which are super popular with tech startups and cloud services, and they are using names that sound like system demons. FortiNet is literally a common package for bootstrapping cloud servers.
So they are betting on our fatigue. They are betting that we won't look twice.
They're betting on pattern recognition. We are trained to look for anomalies. These names are designed to look like the baseline.
So they get in, they use this master key. What is the first thing they do? Are they crashing the router?
No. Crashing it would alert you. They are being quiet. The first thing they do is grab the config file.
The configuration file. To the average listener, that sounds kind of boring. Why is that the prize?
The config file contains everything. It has your IP addresses, your routing tables, your firewall policies. But crucially, it often contains hashed passwords, VPN pre-shared keys, user lists.
So if I have your config file, I have the blueprint of your bank vault.
You have the blueprint. The config file, I don't need to hack you anymore. I can just build a map of your network, find the weakest link, or crack your VPN keys offline and walk in the front door later.
That brings us to the next step. They don't just steal the map and leave, do they? The report mentioned persistence.
Persistence is the scary word here, because patching the vulnerability, fixing that SSO handshake we talked about, only stops them from getting that specific way again.
Right.
It doesn't kick them out if they have already made themselves a set of keys.
And they're making keys by creating local admin accounts.
Yes. And again, look at the names they are using. They aren't creating a user named admin2. They are creating users named backup, audit, support, svcadmin.
Backup. That is devious.
It is brilliant. If you see a user named backup, you assume it is a service account for Veeam or some nightly archival process. You are terrified to delete it because you don't want to break the backups.
It is the scream test. You don't want to turn it off and hear someone scream.
Exactly. Or audit. You assume the compliance team created it for the quarterly review. Or support. You assume a colleague opened a ticket with FortiNet last month and forgot to close the account.
They're hiding in the noise of administrative overhead.
Precisely.
So imagine this scenario. I am an IT manager. I see the news today, I panic, I rush to patch my FortiGate to the latest version, I feel safe, I go home for the weekend.
And that is the dangerous illusion.
Because while I was patching the front door, the attacker was already sitting in the basement with a user account name system that I didn't check.
Precisely. You lock the door, but the intruder is already watching TV on your couch. This is why the remediation for this isn't just apply patch. It has to be apply patch and hunt.
Before we get to the hunting guide, because we definitely need to tell people how to find these things, I want to touch on the vendor response, because FortiNet did something pretty drastic earlier this week.
They did. On January 26, 4 days after the attack started, they pulled the plug.
What do you mean?
They disabled the FortiCloud SSO feature globally on their end.
That is rare.
It is the nuclear option. It means every legit admin relying on SSO suddenly couldn't log in that way. But given the 9.4 severity and the fact that it was being actively exploited, they had to stop the bleeding while they built the filter.
And then they turned it back on the next day, but with new rules.
Right. On the 27th, they re-enabled it, but they added logic to the cloud side that says if the device trying to connect is running a vulnerable firmware version, deny the request.
So they are enforcing the patch from the cloud down.
It is a clever stopgap. It forces you to update if you want to use the feature, but it doesn't clean up the mess on the device itself.
Which brings us to CISA. They added it to the Known Exploited Vulnerabilities catalog. We mentioned the deadline is today. What actually happens if a federal agency misses this deadline?
It's a compliance violation. It goes on a report to the Department of Homeland Security. Heads can roll. It isn't just a suggestion. It is a directive.
And for the private sector?
For the private sector, while you don't have a legal mandate in the same way, insurance companies are watching.
That is a good point. Cyber insurance is getting strict.
Very strict. If you get breached next week via this CVE, and the forensic report shows you didn't patch by the 30th, good luck with your claim. That falls under negligence clauses in many policies now.
Okay, so let's talk solutions. We have listeners running 7.x, 8.x. What are the magic numbers they need to hit?
Get your pens out or check the show notes. If you are running FortiOS, the main operating system, you need to be on 7.4.11 or 7.6.6.
7.4.11 or 7.6.6.
If you are running FortiManager, you want 7.4.1 or 7.6.6, and for FortiAnalyzer, it is 7.2.12 or 7.0.1x.
Okay, but let's be real. We have a lot of listeners who work in complex environments. Hospitals, factories, 247 operations. You can't just reboot the core firewall at 2 p.m. on a Friday without planning.
No, you often can't. Change management boards exist for a reason. You break a hospital network, lives are at risk.
So if I can't patch this second, what do I do? Am I just exposed?
No, you have an immediate workaround. You need to disable the FortiCloud SSO configuration on the device.
The checkbox we talked about earlier.
Uncheck it. Or, if you are in the command line interface, run the command unset FortiCloud SSO login. It cuts the cord. The vulnerability relies on that handshake.
So no handshake, no exploit.
If you refuse to shake hands, the exploit fails. It buys you time to schedule the outage for the patch.
It's the tourniquet.
Exactly.
Wow.
The tourniquet, the patch, is the surgery.
Now, the part everyone dreads, the cleanup. You mentioned earlier that patching doesn't remove the bad actors. How do I actually find them?
You need to audit your local administrators. And you need to do it with a very, very suspicious eye. You cannot just glance at it.
I'm looking at the user list. What am I checking for?
First, check the creation timestamp. If you see any administrator account created between January 22nd and today, treat it as hostile until proven otherwise.
Even if it is named support?
Especially if it is named support, unless you have a ticket number and a change log that says Bob created the support user at 9:00 a.m. on Tuesday, you delete it.
The Cincy's advisory was pretty specific about this too. They basically said, don't trust the names.
Names are arbitrary labels. Timestamps are facts. And look at the permissions. Does the user backup really need super admin privileges? Probably not.
No.
A backup user usually just needs read access. If you see a service account with full global access, that is a red flag the size of a billboard.
It is unnerving, though, isn't it, to think that you have to second-guess your own system logs.
It is. But that is the reality of living off the land attacks. Attackers aren't bringing in custom malware if they can just use your own administrative tools against you.
Why write a virus when you can just log in as admin?
Exactly. And use the built-in export tools.
Yeah.
It's just easier.
It really highlights the fragility of this whole ecosystem. We rely so much on these centralized identity providers.
We do. And look, SSO is great. I am not saying we should go back to sticky notes with passwords on monitors. But this incident proves that when you centralize identity, you centralize risk.
Right.
If the gatekeeper FortiCloud has a flaw, every single castle it guards is suddenly open.
And the friction between easy setup and secure setup is clearly still winning for the easy side.
CISA keeps pushing for secure by design. This is the poster child for why that matters. The default state of a device should be, nothing works until I turn it on, not everything is open until I turn it off.
If FortiNet had required admins to manually enable SSO, like put up a big warning box that says, do you want to enable cloud login? How many of those 3 million devices would be exposed?
A fraction, maybe 10%. The other 90% are victims of the default setting.
So let's wrap this up with clear takeaways for our listeners today. 1.
Patch.
Absolutely. Patch to the versions we listed.
2. If you can't patch, kill the SSO immediately.
Turn it off. It stops the attack vectors.
3. Assume you're compromised and hunt for the ghosts.
Check the logs. Check the timestamps.
Right.
And 4. Change your mindset about system accounts. Just because it looks official doesn't mean it is.
I want to leave everyone with a thought that has been nagging me since we started prepping this. We talked about how the attackers use names like audit and system to blend in. The perfect disguise.
I'm willing to bet that most people listening, even the tech-savvy ones, haven't actually audited their user lists in months, maybe years.
It's usually a set and forget thing. You create your admin account on day one and you never look at that screen again.
So here's the question. If you logged into your router or your server or even your home NAS right now, and you saw a user named backup service, would you know if it was supposed to be there?
That is the uncomfortable question.
Would you have the confidence to delete it? Or would you leave it just in case it is important? Because that hesitation, that is exactly where the attackers are living.
If you don't know what normal looks like, you will never spot the abnormal.
Go check your logs, everyone. Don't trust the defaults.
Stay vigilant.